welcome to another episode of Control Alt Access. It's a podcast where myself, Laura, and my lovely co-host Arevia,
Hi
we we
everyone.
we talk about accessibility in video games, stuff we've played, news that's happened, all that sort of stuff. How are you doing today?
We are surviving. I think that is the line we're going to put it on today. We are
Yeah,
surviving. Maybe not thriving, but we are surviving.
I mean, you know, we're surviving because we're thriving.
Yes, that's true.
We're both doing really cool stuff, but it's
Yes.
stuff that is like physically and emotionally draining, and I'm sure we
Yes.
will talk about the bits we've been up to.
Yeah. But
So it's been, yeah.
but what have you been? Have you been playing something nice since last time we talked?
I have. I have played a surprising amount of stuff given how busy this week is for
Oh,
me. Where do I start? I can talk about this one because we kind of touched on it last week, and I've now finished the game and can talk about it in a bit more depth. I finished playing through Pine Hearts.
nice. How did you like it?
Pine Hearts, super charming game.
Oh,
If anyone didn't see episode 2 of this, it is a top-down adventure game about this little person shaped like a bean, who is going back to this sort of park at the base of a mountain to go, I have positive childhood memories from here, and now I'm returning without parent that I came with as a child to re-explore this place. And the narrative is really emotionally sweet. It is a very charming game. I think the thing that it does really well is it, because it's made up of this like little hub of smaller hub areas that you spend a lot of time getting to know and getting to know the people of. It starts to feel like a really familiar space, which is clearly how it is supposed to feel for the character, and I think they nail that really well.
nice.
Um, I had a couple of little issues. My issues were mainly around navigation. The game has like one small, very zoomed in map and one very zoomed out big map and
Um,
nothing in between.
yeah.
And I occasionally had some trouble navigating to objectives or to new areas
Yep.
because neither map was quite the right scale for me to work out where I was going.
Yep. Makes sense.
Um, but outside of that, it was a charming, just a very good, wholesome, relaxed game that I had a lovely time with.
I'm glad to hear.
But I also played something else that's like 2 hours long, and I can't wait to tell you about it because I think you would really enjoy this game.
Okay, which one?
I played Ducktective, the Salami Bandit.
I can. When you said Ducktective, I can only hear like this cursed TikTok where somebody has made like Ducktail intro, but it's only animal sounds, and now that is playing in my head. It's like Ducktails. Ooh, I know. Okay, but yeah, what is this Ducktective of a duck doing?
Okay, so this game is like pretty short. It's somewhere between 2 and 3 hours, and you play a detective who is a duck. You are like a divorced, slightly depressed detective duck who has been called in for a case, and the detective mystery starts as there's a company that runs a bus station, and someone stole some salami out of the work fridge. And it spirals over a couple of hours into quite an elaborate, like, crime drama,
Oh, I want
all
to
around
play this.
these silly little animal characters. Uh, Things I really like about this game. It is entirely set in, here is like one building with like maybe 3 rooms off to the side of it, and maybe 8 characters total.
Oh,
It's
nice.
all very contained.
Yeah,
It's not like the clues could be in a million different places, and if you're struggling with where progression is, if you look at the map of this office, there will be an exclamation mark if there is like, oh, the office break room. There's an exclamation mark on it, which means there's
nice,
somewhere in there a clue you haven't found yet.
nice. I like that.
Um, so you can always pretty clearly tell like what room do I need to go and hunt around in a bit more. The interrogation mechanics are all like, I want to ask you about something that is relevant. You press this button, and it'll show you up to 8 pictures, and it's like one of these 8 things you can talk to them about.
Okay, that's nice.
It doesn't do that adventure game thing of try every single piece of evidence on every single person. It's like, no, if this isn't going to get you anything useful. We won't even show you it as an option to talk to that person about. And I'm like, cool, that helps.
Yeah, that's nice. So it's sort of like a fun detective game, but it's not too straining.
Yeah, the detective mechanic is that you're basically like, through these conversations you'll get words, and then eventually you'll have a fill in the blank mechanic that's like, um, there'll be a sentence with some missing words and some drop downs to select words that you found through conversations to try and fill in the gaps. And as you get closer, like let's say there's 8 gaps in this statement,
yeah,
and it'll tell you like more than 3 things are wrong, exactly 3 things are wrong, or fewer than 3 things are wrong in the answers you filled out. So you can sort of, if you're a little bit stuck and you can get it to the point where it's like, oh, exactly 3 things are wrong, you can change something and go, does this make it more than 3 or does it make it less than 3? Cool, I can tell that's correct by elimination.
cool.
So there's tools to help you like narrow down where your mistakes are. And there's also a nice system of, if you're still stuck, you can just get the detective to have a little ponder about the mystery, and you can sort of go like, oh, what am I struggling with? Missing words, and then it'll be like, he'll give you a little hint as to maybe where you can find the word you're missing
that's nice.
Plug in.
Nice.
All of it is voice acted as well, which I
nice.
really appreciate.
Yeah, that's cool.
Helps me focus on it a lot better.
Yeah, as somebody who has dyslexia, like, I love myself a puzzle game, but if it's too much reading, at some point my brain is going to say and just
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little detective mystery with a cute duck with a bread addiction.
Nice.
All voice acted, maybe 2 or 3 hours long. I really love it.
Oh, brilliant.
I played some other things this week. What else have I played? Let's have a look. I played Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, which has just had a remake on Nintendo Switch.
I think that is going to be my off-town game sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, because, I did play these games growing up. I did not have, I did have some Nintendo systems, but I didn't have those. Like, I didn't have the N64s and the NES and those kinds. I only had the handhelds. So I haven't played it before. So I really, really want to look into it.
Yeah, I've been playing it as a free time game, but I also feel a little bit of sometimes when you feel like people expect me to play this one.
Yeah.
And like I don't think it's too spoilery to say something about this game because like the original came out a couple of decades ago. In that, as a trans person, there's a bit of expectation I played this game because like 20 years ago when this game originally released, there's a character called Vivian who in the Japanese version clearly intended to be a trans woman character who kind of got written out in English and some of the European translations. And her story I've always thought only really makes sense with her as a trans woman. Because like the whole point of her journey is that her and Mario go through something that's very paralleled. Mario has his name and identity stolen from him, and no one who looks at him sees him for who he is or calls him by his name. And these two characters have a very similar journey together that makes sense because it's like, oh, you are empathizing with each other because you've both gone through something similar.
Yep.
And they've added that back in the new Switch remake, and I've been trying to get through to see how well they've handled it, and honestly, I've been really impressed so far.
I'm so glad. I am glad.
They've done a really good job of being faithful to what that original story was aiming for, while sanding off a couple of the edges that haven't aged terribly well in 20 years. I'm honestly really happy with how it's been handled, and it's really nice to see a Nintendo game of all companies seemingly get this right.
Yeah.
And that's nice.
Yeah, that's cool. It's not that often, and that's really, really cool. And I'm glad. We have known that the Mario universe have had trans characters, especially like Birdo is also one. We have known it, but it has been, if you are a nerd, you might have read like the magazines, and then you would know it because it says it in the magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's always been
like in game.
Yeah, it's always been like region coded as well. Like like if you're in English speaking territories, there's that one manual for that Mario game that talks about Birdo, and then it's never acknowledged again
Nope.
unless you play like Japan exclusive Wii game Captain Rainbow, which has a plot line about Birdo being trans in
Yeah.
2006. Um, it's it's one of those things where it's like it's nice to see something of this acknowledged and like modernized in a decent way.
Yeah. It is really, really cool.
Uh
And yeah.
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 I got two others. I'll get through nice and quick. I played a really interesting game called Indika. Um, Indika is it's about 4 hours long, maybe. It is a game about a nun in like early 1900s Russia having a journey of religious doubt.
Oh,
Uh,
this one. Yeah, I had to
yeah,
Google it.
yeah. It's basically a nun has to go on a long journey to deliver a letter, and she has Satan in her head during the talk trying to get her to doubt her faith.
Yes.
And it is a game largely about conversations about religion and answering the difficult questions that often in Christianity you're sometimes shouted down for not having faith if you asked.
Yep.
It was a very interesting game as someone that like was heavily Christian up until like my mid to late teens. There was a lot about it that was very relatable as someone who had questions about things like, wait a minute, are all sins truly equal? Like,
Yeah.
is it really viewed by God just as evil to be envious of someone as it is to murder someone? Are they both equally sinful?
Yeah.
Those difficult questions. It's not a game that is like particularly pro or anti Christianity. It is just a game about how easy it is when separated from the context of church to have doubts form when you think about those questions.
I think it's
Um,
one of the powers of gaming, though. It's a way of like you can go through your emotions,
mm,
and like in a way that is not necessarily going through them inside yourself, but you can do it externally, like having a release of emotions. And it's also a
yeah.
really good sign of how creative some people can be. And yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it is a fascinating game that uses video gamey elements like having a level up system and like collectible experience points
Yeah,
to make its narrative point really well.
cool.
I think it's one of those games where it's like, oh, you can probably complete it in a single sitting or a couple of sittings, and I really appreciate being able to actually finish a game
Yeah.
when I don't have that
Yeah.
much time.
Yes.
And the last one I've played this week is Hellblade 2,
Yeah.
Senua's Saga, which I wanna I have a lot of thoughts about this
Yeah.
game. So for anyone who never played the first one, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is a game about a woman experiencing psychosis
Yeah.
who goes on a journey because the short version, her lover is killed in a tragic event, and she basically goes on a journey to bring his head to the god of the underworld in the hopes that he can be brought back to life.
Yeah.
And it is a journey about that and her struggles with being ostracized societally for experiencing psychosis. And it is a very it's a very direct game. It knows what it wants to be.
Yeah.
It is very focused on its objective. And it is a difficult game to play for a lot of people,
Yeah, I
understandably,
can't play
because
that game. I can't
I
play
I
them.
I don't blame anyone who can't. I was talking to Stephanie Sterling the other day, who was very similar, who picked up the second one and was like, I can tell it's a great game, just can't play
Yeah.
it. Because it does a lot of things with 3D audio of
Yeah.
voices coming from various directions, often being, particularly in the first one, often being quite berating of the player.
Mhm.
It can be quite overwhelming to have 3 or 4 different voices from all around telling you you're doing terribly while you try and play a game.
I think
Um,
it's cool. Like I have PTSD, which is why I don't
mm,
play games like this because I'm afraid I will trigger something because they are meant to do that. They are
yeah,
meant to be triggering. They're meant to be horrible in that sense. But I think it's also quite cool because um as somebody who has experienced like I think I hear something but it's not there, and
Mm,
also with sometimes with PTSD you can experience the feeling of touch of where like you
yeah.
have your trauma from. Like having things like this to make people more aware without making it sort of a haha, it's cool.
Yeah. And that first game I think is particularly hard in that regard because like
Yeah,
the main character Senua's relationship to the voices she hears is very adversarial. It is very combative. The new one that's just come out, Senua's Saga, is really interesting. It's still going to be hard for a lot of people to
yeah.
play, and I don't blame anyone who struggles with it. A couple of accessibility things I think are really nice. They've done a really good job of how to handle subtitles for the voices that she hears. Um,
Oh,
if if you're not using headphones
yeah,
and you're just reading subtitles, you can have up to 4 subtitles appearing at one time in separate positions down the bottom of the screen that
nice.
will represent like is the voice coming from the left, the middle, or the right?
Yeah,
So it's sort of showing when the voices are showing up and where they're showing up from, and keeping it separate from her internal monologue or conversations with other people. Like it's a really well implemented subtitle system. Um, but the thing that worked really well for me about the game, and this isn't going to click for everyone, is this second one is a lot less about her battling largely a world of her own hallucinations. It's much more a game where she is interacting with other people and her hallucinations are a layer on top of
oh
the
cool,
reality that everyone else is seeing.
cool.
And it is a journey about her being able to be seen by other people around her as like sure she has a mental health condition, but it is one that makes her painfully empathetic about the safety and the comfort of others.
Yeah,
She is seen as someone who can make friendships and relationships and can see the world in a way that other people don't, that, isn't some magical ability, but it sometimes is helpful to see connections that other people aren't seeing when you have
yeah.
problems you don't know how to solve. And
I like
it's
that. It's the way of
yeah,
looking at like mental health problem. I despise when people's like, "Oh, you have a mental health problem. You have like a superpower." No, it
yeah,
encumbers me in everyday life a lot, but
yeah,
also, of course, I learn things from it, like
yeah,
empathy and stuff like that.
yeah. It's gonna be a hard game to play for some people,
Yeah,
but I also think like it's one of the most tasteful depictions of mental health I think I've seen
cool.
in a video game, in terms of going, this person is not inherently dangerous because of their mental health condition. If anything, they are more aware of the hurt and
Yeah,
suffering that is out there and wanting to prevent other people experiencing it. It's very much a story about someone whose mental health condition is still a struggle, but is something that ultimately does let them see the world in a way others don't, and that can sometimes be what's needed to fix a problem that people are being a bit stubborn about. And
yeah.
there's something very lovely about it.
I
So
think
I'm glad I played it, even if it was a lot.
I tweeted out that I'm not going to play it due to mental health, and I got some comments, and I also got some DMs of people saying like, "Thank you for sort of saying it out loud," because some also have felt a bit pressure to play it, and
Yeah,
yeah, like I hope like it's just being open about it, just like understanding that people that not every game are for us. You don't have to force
yeah,
yourself through and liking a game. There is a million billion games out there. Just go play something fun. But it's at the same time it's also really cool to see a game that is sort of a bit realistic in how they
yeah,
look at things. Like I will never get rid of my PTSD. That is something that will live with me my rest of
yeah,
my life. But do I have a stronger and better mental health now than before I went to a psychologist before? Yeah, yes. And
yeah.
it's like it's a nice thing of seeing somebody can understand the duality of that. You can actually
Mm,
be have a diagnostic but have a better life now than before, and it's a cool thing. I like when games are dabbling into things, especially when I do it respectfully.
yeah.
Yeah,
And the last thing I wanted to say about Hellblade 2, which I think is really nice, when you boot up that game, there is an accessibility menu on first boot, which is
Yay!
great. And also, there's a 25-minute documentary you can watch from the main menu that is talking to the accessibility consultants who experienced psychosis, who consulted on the game,
Oh,
talking about their conditions, talking about their conditions in relationship to their work on the game,
wow.
and like going into proper depth on the condition in a way that is really relatable. There was an example that was given in that documentary that for someone who doesn't experience psychosis, really I think was a really great relatable example to give, which was talking about I don't know if you know the optical illusion where if you have a mask with a light on it and you rotate it in a circle, when the mask is facing away from you, it can look like it's facing
Yeah,
towards you
yeah,
still.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because we're hardwired to see faces, and our brains will make connections sometimes that aren't there because what we're expecting to see. And comparing that as part of how like visual hallucinations can work with psychosis, of it's not that you're wrong for seeing that, but it's your brain has drawn a connection
Yeah,
because that's what it's looking for. It's like, yeah, great way to make that experience understandable, I think.
yeah.
So yeah, that's everything I've played this week. What have you played this week?
I haven't played a lot because I've been traveling. I
You
have,
have, but that's kind of
yeah,
related to something.
yeah. So, some might have seen it, some might have not, but I was in Ireland last week, which is also why I'm
You were.
tired. Yes. So I have had the absolute honor, and it is an honor because I'm the first
Hmm.
influencer that has been over to the Byowave warehouse of where they make Byowave, the new controller that is will come
Yeah,
out in November.
the Proteus controller. This is
Yes.
that one made of all the little cubes you plug
Yes.
together.
Yes. So I was there. I was Evelyn, which is the one I've been talking to, invited me 3 weeks ago. I think it was 3 weeks ago.
Hmm.
I got a mail, or 4 weeks ago, going like, "Hey, do you want to come over?" And first I was like, "This is spam. There is no way in living this world that somebody would ask me." So I ended up like Googling and like trying to figure out,
Yeah,
and
you messaged me and I was
yeah.
like, no, this is real.
Yeah, and went to like LinkedIn and everything to try to figure out like, am
Yeah.
I being scammed?
Oh,
And
I get
yeah,
it.
because there is so many other people they could have chose from, but no, they wanted me, and they wanted me to come
Yeah.
over. And so what I was asked to do is that and like full transparency, got paid to do this. This is a job for me, a job both to make
Yeah.
content for them and also to test out the Proteus controller, build it. And it was really, really cool because one thing was that before I went over there, we had a lot of Zoom meetings. And in one of the Zoom meetings, we were just like, how do you want to go forward with this? And the way I
Hmm.
like to test new things is to not read about it. So I
Yeah.
had read like check the website, but not anything more. So I went in
Yeah.
completely blind, trying to make
Hmm.
everything work, try to figure out how this worked, la la la. And it
Yeah.
was so nice. I got to test like I got a kit to test out, to like film and try to like put together, and
Hmm.
that was a bit hard. But then I realized, like, when I got to see the instructions they've made, because they were completely done, uh,
Hmm.
I got them sent by to me on phone, and I got to read through them, and I was just like, okay, now it makes sense. And it was such
Yeah.
a aha moment for why cognitive accessibility is so important,
Yeah.
because I feel like, so I talk about this a lot, but like how my house and apartment is so honed into my disabilities and my problems and
Hmm.
illnesses that I don't necessarily feel disabled when I walk around in my house. Then I meet the real world, and then I go like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
wait.
Very relatable.
Yeah. So and that was one of those things, like my brain just, I couldn't, I for some way I looked at the controller and I was just like, there is something I'm supposed to do here, I just don't understand.
Hmm.
And then I got the instruction, which was really, really well made. I started on understanding, started building a lot of different things. And of course,
Hmm.
this is, I'm going to make a whole YouTube about this. But one of the cool things I just want to talk about is that I had tested that whole day. So we were like around now 7 hours of testing and filming and going around and learning. So it's a lot of impressions for me.
Yeah.
And then my hand started hurting. So I told Evelyn, I think I need to stop playtesting because I was also playing games while doing this. I played Ori in the Blind Forest just to see if because I like platformers because then you can do a lot of the same things over and over again.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can get like a ballpoint of how does this actually work. And my right hand, because I played a lot with one-handed controller, like I made a one-handed setup, and I started to say like it's starting to hurt, and she was just like, do you want to end up or do you want to try a desk configuration? So that is sort of a way where you can imagine you laying your hands on the desk and then like sort of you crab pinch a controller where the buttons are in front, so you use the buttons with your thumb, and then you use your pointy finger, middle finger, I don't know what they're called in English, to steer the joysticks with. And I was just like, you know what, I'm now in pain, I have a flare-up right now, let's see how this will work. She gave it to me, she made a configuration really cool, she gave it to me, she went out, and I tried, and I started bawling my eyes out. Because it removed all the pain. I went from from having massive flare-up in my hand because I have to hold a controller a specific way and was like, oh, I wish I had my feet controller, until having to could lay my hands down on the desk, relaxing in a more what I feel is a natural form for me, and doing this, and that change was enough to not use any of now the inflated parts of my arm.
I know how big a deal this is for you, because like we've talked about the PlayStation Access controller before, and the fact that you struggled with that controller of having pain when using it as a desk-based controller, at least in part because it had to be used in a certain way. And that was the one. It's so nice to hear that it's like, oh, I can use a desk-based controller when it's like swapping out for bits that are inflamed, like keeping in rotation which bits are getting upset.
And the thing is that this is like, this was just boom. Like I can't even explain it. I have a clip where I just start crying, and I just have to like get some water, and I'm just like, and it is so silly, but like one of the biggest fear I have with my life is to getting older. And losing the ability to game. And that is like a legit fear I have, because all my friendships are around gaming, everything I do is around gaming. And then just like suddenly it was like getting a medication for the first time and not feel pain.
It's I totally understand. I think it's the thing that drives a lot of us that are in accessibility to get into accessibility, is that fear of like either I can't play games now, or the fear of not being able to play them as you go on. And I'm so happy to hear that this is working for you so well.
It was so nice. So this was in Ireland, Galway is where, so that is east of Ireland. And then on Saturday, I went to west of Ireland in Dublin with them to be on their stand. So then I got to actually talk to people, and that was really cool. I especially enjoyed talking to a bunch of the kids that was there, because since I have had a small flare-up the day before, because like just in general doing a lot of things, my hands were shaking. And then I could like, because kids were looking at me and going like, but you don't look disabled, which is a fair thing for kids to say. But then I could show them that how my arms were shaking. And I could show them like when I used my hand in one position, you can see my hands are shaking. Then I move it in towards me and I stop shake. And the kids were just like, oh, that makes sense. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool. Because they were just like, and then they just went, but it looks like Lego, can I try? And then they got to build things. There was like this kid who, we had 3 sets of this controller with us, which is a lot of like different things, because you can fiddle it in the way you want with us. And then one kid took like, of course, everything on the table and put everything together.
But I mean, I think that's wonderful. The idea that these children are associating accessibility technology as something fun and exciting rather than something like
Yeah.
clinical, and it's like,
Yes.
no, this is exciting technology and here's a person that I can see, oh, that's good, it's good for you that it does that.
Yeah.
That's a perfect thing to instill in kids.
And it was really cool also because they are they want you to use a lot of like 3D printing, and they also try and make things themselves. That is like how they do some things. So I was also shown like because some people, so I sort of look at it between like if we have the standard controller and then you have an Xbox adaptive controller, this one is sort of a bit in between, because it will, there are people that this will be too small for, they don't have the fine motor skills for and stuff like that. And then they showed me like these small little 3D printing things they're trying to make to see if they can easier disconnect the cubes from each other and take the buttons off and stuff like that. So they're quite innovative in the way they're thinking, and it's so cool. When I was on Ireland Gamer Fest as well, like the Sunday, they had traveled back, so I was like all alone in Dublin. Oh no, it was actually really, really cool. I ended up going over because Gamer Fest had this of course they're showing off games, makes sense, but they also had a student, like a hub or like a place where students could come and show off their games they made. And I went over there and started talking to them, and every time I asked them like, have any of you told about accessibility, they all was really, really scared. And and then I was just like, but I can tell you. And then I started sitting down with each of the games and going through them and telling them like, this is the accessibility they're doing, this is why this is good, this is like, I did a review live for them sort of, but like I taught them like, why is XYZ good, why is, what in this game could you call accessible. And I was sitting playing this really cute dog game, and then I was like going through everything saying like, here you need to fix this, here is what this is good, because every game has some sort of accessibility. Like, that is just how it is. Non-game is 0% accessible. And I turned around and there were just like 4, 5, 6 of them just scribbling, like really, really scribbling away. I was just like, they sucked up everything I said. And it was so cool. The future of gaming is going to be good.
Yeah, because like I don't think anyone wants their game to be inaccessible.
No.
It's so much of it is just people. You need to catch people when they are early enough in development, and like you know, particularly with solo developers, you catch them early enough in a game's development and go, "Here's what you could do to help," and they're like, wonderful, I will get on this. I want to be cool and people to be able to play stuff. And I'm like, the kids are all right.
And I talked to them a lot about like the importance of not only having an accessible game, but also the importance of information, of how like you need to publish this on your Steam page and stuff like that. And just seeing these amazing students standing there going like scribbling away and going like, they were so on point. They wanted
you
to learn.
can see the light bulb moment in people like this.
Yes, and it was really cool, like how, because one of the games they were just like, we don't have any accessibility. We haven't been able to add anything. And then I asked them like, what do you mean about that? And they were just like, we haven't been able to add colorblind mode. And I was just like, but that isn't the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
And this was a game because it was supposed to be a game where you play as a dog. So one of the things in the game is that it's you see everything with this color spectrum of a dog, which is like blue and yellow, and then they had a mode where you could take them off, and I was just like, you literally sort of have colorblind mode in your game already. And they were just like, oh, we didn't think about that. So it was just so cool. It's just been a really amazing week. I posted some TikToks about it. I will post more. I will post like it's of course not going to be a review, because that isn't ethical, since I got sent over there to do it, but it's going to be like my first impression of working with this, touching this, trying this as a person with cognitive issues, as a person with mobility issues. I can't wait. I have and as a nerd, like since we like making videos, this studio they had was like lined up with a lot of LED lights, and it looks so good on the camera. So I have some clips that is just like, and the box it comes in has like part of the cube is like reflective, So I could make this
Yeah.
cool ass effect of going like with my light over to make it shine. And I was just like standing for hours going like,
Oh,
yeah, box,
I
come on.
I'm so happy it went so well. I've been so excited to hear about this trip, and I'm really
Yeah.
glad it's been so positive.
Yeah.
I've got one question about the Proteus
Yeah.
controller. I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but it's a thing I've been really wondering about
Mhm.
it. Um, so with one of these kits, I assume there's only one cube involved in a single kit that does the transmitting. So you couldn't have, say, one kit and you split it in half and have like two halves held separately from each other.
So the kit I got to test, you couldn't do that for. Because
Yeah,
so the kit I had a power cube, a secondary cube, and two
yeah.
joystick cubes.
Hmm.
And but they hope that what they're going to be able to is to give you two power cubes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense, because I'm thinking about like the configurations that would probably work for me, and
Yeah.
the thing that I always really value is being able to have my two hands but separated out and to be able to be flexible about where I
Yes.
put them.
Yes.
And right now that's been a thing that only really has been possible on Nintendo, and I'm like, if I
Yes.
can find a way with something like this Proteus to be able to basically do the split my hands apart
Yeah,
and
joystick,
separately position
Joy-Cons,
them.
but with like
Yeah,
something else.
I want the Xbox equivalent of Joy-Cons,
Yeah.
and yeah, if they at some point do two power cubes, because obviously Xbox has co-pilot mode, two controllers tell the Xbox they're both one.
Yes.
It feels like it'll likely be possible.
Yeah, and I tried like matching up more cubes to the system, and it worked fine.
Yeah.
And the software they did was really, really cool as well, because when you connect it, I think it's going to be an app, but also you can connect it to your PC, and we got to see the software.
Yeah.
And one thing I thought was really cool was that if you make a configuration and you plug it into your PC or app or whatever, it just understands. Like it's smart
Yeah.
enough to understand what what you have configured, so that
Yeah.
you don't need to put in anything, which is again
The hardware can work out how it's been plugged together and
Yeah.
then just tell the computer what that is.
it's sentient. It
Lovely.
understands itself. But like if you take off a button, it just like automatically registers that. And also if you remap a button and then take it off and put it back on again, it remembers what you had done last time.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and also the Joy-Cons, even though they have like a Nord configuration, which is supposed to be, because when I started figuring out, I was just like, this stops it sort of for building a lot of weird things, because if I always have to keep the Nord, no, that is just like that you go into the system and you can just change it. So it's a lot of cool things.
Yes.
It's out in, I think it was November, December, so it's for Christmas.
Yeah,
and
toward the end of this
wait.
year, yeah.
I can't wait. The only bad thing from that weekend was the fact that I didn't get it home with me.
I felt the same way with the PlayStation Access Controller preview event that was like 2 months before it came out. I was like, but it's so ready. Let me take it with me.
Yeah, I was like, why can't I just take it home? It helps me.
Yeah, that is so good to hear. I've been so fascinated with this controller. I found out I went to Gamescom last year, and then like a day or two after getting back from Gamescom, I saw this controller had been there, and I was like, I wish I'd known. This would have been my #1 thing at Gamescom to check out.
Yeah.
So for like nearly a year, I've been like so curious about it, and I'm really glad the first impressions I've heard have been this exciting.
Yeah.
Yay!
I think the only negative thing, like series, is the price. It's quite expensive.
Yeah.
But that is just like, and some people have said like, but they are not. They're an independent company. They're designing for Xbox. We're going to talk about a little bit more about that later on. But they're an independent tech company, and making tech is expensive. Like it's just how it is. My hope is just that they sell millions, and that will be able, so they can able to lower the price.
I don't blame them for the price being where it is, but I can still be critical of the price. Because it is, as pointed out, I think, like, we'll talk about this in more depth, it is the most expensive of the currently, like, mass-produced accessibility controllers before you get into the more, like, big bespoke stuff.
And disability tax is a real thing, but the fact is just that, it should be just, I hope some charity organization buys up a really, really big bunch of these.
Yeah, my big hope is that they are able to get this in front of people at a bunch of conventions, even if that's in the form of, say, like, providing a couple of them to the charity Special Effect, so that Special Effect can let people try them at conventions, because with that price tag, it's really important that people can go hands-on with it before committing to that kind of
Yes.
price point.
Yes. But I talked a lot
yeah,
about this with them, and they were really like, we understand. This is what we hear the most, and they understood it. So I have big hopes. So yeah.
yeah,
But let's jump into the news, shall we?
yeah. On this week's news roundup, a new update improves Xbox Adaptive Controller functionality. The Byowave Proteus controller is officially licensed for Xbox. Nothing Without Us digital and physical event announced for July in the UK. Rebellion shares accessibility usage stats. A new accessible gaming wiki is announced. Xbox Game Accessibility Workshop Toolkit is announced. And more info ahead of the Accessibility Summer Showcase.
Yes.
So, let's jump into the news. And a lot of this is stuff that popped up during... we published our last episode on Global Accessibility Awareness Day.
Yeah, God.
Which meant that the day we posted this, a lot of accessibility news happened, which was about 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is.
Yep.
Let's start with Xbox had a bunch of news on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, but one of the big ones they had was... the Xbox Adaptive Controller has had a software update, which is available to people who are part of the Xbox Insider Beta, which is free to sign up for. It'll be available for everyone else in the coming weeks and months.
Yep.
But it's made it so if you have an Xbox Adaptive Controller and you have something plugged into one of the USB slots on it, previously that USB device you plug in could only support up to 8 buttons. Now, that USB device can have up to 12 buttons that the Xbox Adaptive Controller will recognize. So that's just 4 extra buttons supported per port, and there's multiple USB ports.
Yep.
That's wonderful. Those USB ports also now support a second analog stick, so if you plug a dual analog stick thing into the USB port, both analog sticks will be registered, not just one.
Yep.
And they also now recognize hat switches, which... if you've ever used a flight stick where, like, the thumb is rested over a little sort of almost analog...
it is.
Yeah, it's those little sort of an analog stick on the thumb of a flight stick.
Yeah.
Those can now be recognized. So if you want to, like, hold a flight stick with most of your hand and use just the little thumb nub as an analog stick, you can now do that.
Cool. That's cool.
And, like, this was really exciting news for me to see because, like, I really appreciate seeing a piece of accessibility hardware like the Xbox Adaptive Controller not just be a static thing and then going, cool, can we push what kind of inputs and how many inputs at once these ports on our already established controller can do? Because it tells me Xbox isn't looking to go, we'll sell Xbox Adaptive Controller version 2 to give you extra functionality. It's like... no, we're going to keep working out how to go, you've already bought the expensive bespoke accessibility controller, how can we let it do more?
And I think it's every time I meet somebody from Xbox accessibility team or working on this and stuff like that, they are really, really committed to doing things better. Like every time I talk to them, they're just like, just wait to the next update. They're like really, really hard working on this. And to be honest, I find it quite refreshing that they sort of are now sort of understanding that they are a hub. Like the Xbox Adaptive Controller is called a controller, but it is a hub. It's like, of course, if you only need 2 buttons, it is usable for you, but mostly it is a hub. And I feel like they are now like sort of even more
embracing
that. They are like, we're the king of hubs. Like, if you need a hub, this is what you need. And I think that's really cool. I'm really glad. I did not know it was called a hat switch. I've learned something new today.
Yeah, I was aware of the term, but I had to double check that I correctly knew what it was. I was like, I think this is what it is.
Yeah.
But also on the note of Xbox, and this will sort of tie into Proteus in a moment. Xbox announced that they have streamlined their process to get a controller made into a licensed Xbox controller, so it'll be easier for a third-party controller to be certified for Xbox.
Yes.
And the thing that's kind of important about this story is this is one of the first times that Xbox has officially, like, acknowledged, hey, when we shut off support for third-party peripherals, we did shut off access to a lot of
Yep.
accessibility hardware, and that did cause problems for
Yep.
people. And we're not reversing that decision, but we do recognize that like it had negative consequences. And their solution to that is to go, look, we are only going to allow devices that are officially licensed as Xbox controllers and certified.
Yep.
But we are making a public commitment to make it easier to get that certification. And this leads, yeah.
It's a good in between. I was one of those who were really, really angry. I had tweets going viral about how angry I was on everybody, Nintendo, Xbox, and Sony, for stopping having third-party controllers. That was a really big loss for accessibility last year.
Yeah.
I am glad at least we are seeing something. This isn't this isn't a safe, but it is a compromise.
Brilliantly put. And this was sort of announced. There was some confusion about an announcement that was made on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and this is probably a good time to talk about that.
Yeah.
The announcement that actually happened was the Byowave Proteus controller that you were just talking about got officially licensed to be a certified third-party controller for Xbox.
Yes.
The way that was reported by a lot of people on Accessibility Awareness Day made it sound like Xbox was manufacturing a new accessibility controller made by Xbox. This is Xbox's new controller that they're doing.
Yes.
And that's not the situation. This is made by, like, as you say, like a small independent tech company in Ireland. But there was a lot of confusion around that announcement. Like, what that announcement was something that was meant to tie into, we're making it easier for controllers, particularly ones that are in some way more accessible, to be licensed on Xbox. Here is an example. We've just licensed this one to work on Xbox.
And I think also that was why maybe people were, because I also got a lot of comments on my Xbox stuff of saying like they had just announced a new controller and it was so expensive, and how dare Xbox taking so much money for people. And I think it is important to point out that like this is just, it's sort of what this is that Xbox is giving a stamp of approval. That is just technically what it is. It's a stamp of approval from Xbox saying like, hey, we approve of this product and you can use it on our stuff. It's nothing more than that. The tech in the future, and this tech will not be, as soon as I know, at least for now, be funded by Xbox. They're not made by Xbox. They're just, there's a sticker of approval saying like, this is licensed and okay to use on our stuff. That is what it is. It's nothing more than that, or less.
Yeah. Well put. So yeah, other stuff we have that's pretty cool this week.
Cool.
We got the announcement of Nothing Without Us, which is a disability pride celebration being organised by someone we've talked about on this show before. We talked about during GA Conf. We talked about Molly Evans.
Yeah,
Molly Evans
fantastic Molly Evans.
Yeah. I've been aware that Molly's been trying to organise this for like a year, and I'm so glad it's come together and that like she's found a good accessible venue for it. So one of the things that's really cool about this event is it's having two components, one of which is digital and one of which is physical.
Yes.
So if you cannot, for whatever reasons, cannot travel to an in-person accessibility-focused event, that's cool. There's a digital one happening on, let me check the date, the 13th of July, there is a digital event happening.
Yep.
And then a week later, on the 20th, there is a physical event. But there's a bunch of really cool things that have been taken into account, such as if you want to go to the physical event, but finances are a barrier to accessibility because they are for a lot of disabled people, you can apply for a travel bursary to help cover travel costs for attending the event. Things like that. it's sounding like a really wonderful event, and I'm so excited that all of Molly's hard work is starting to come together.
And I think this is so cool because Molly had like this GFConf talk about like how to make more events accessible, and it's really, really, really shown that she has taken all that she has learned, both the positive and negative sides, over the years of being a content creator and influencer, and like now put it together to the test herself and going like, well, this is how we can do it. I actually did not know about the travel costs covering measures, and maybe I shall try and see if I can get over there then. Who knows?
It would be lovely.
Yeah.
It's there's a whole bunch of like good stuff being put in place. Like one of the ticket purchasing options for the in-person event is, hey, do you want to pay a little extra so that you could potentially cover the cost of someone else's ticket or someone else's travel who needs that covered? I had to keep myself so quiet during Molly's talk at GAConf because I was like, I'm watching that talk going.
I know something.
I was like, I don't know specifics, but I know Molly. Like, I was listening to that talk going, I know Molly is trying to put into practice what she's saying here, and I'm so glad to see that she's made everything line up and she's found sponsors to make it an event that can happen.
And so proud of Molly.
Yeah, I believe the in-person event, I believe this is true for the digital one as well, but we'll have British Sign Language interpreters available, for example. There is a dedicated quiet area being set up. There is accessibility information for like, hey, are you a wheelchair user? Here is accessibility information from the nearest accessible train station to the venue and how accessible that route is and which paths between the two you shouldn't take because those paths won't be accessible. So much thought and care has gone into this event that I am so excited about it.
Really glad.
I need to find some time, but I really want to submit a talk or a panel for it because I really want to support this event. It seems so interesting.
Same.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of other bits. Rebellion, the people behind Sniper Elite. We talked about Carrie Waterton at GAConf. Rebellion did a bunch of cool stuff for Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Perhaps most interestingly for us as, like, numbers stats nerds, they shared a bunch of accessibility usage information for several of their games.
Yep.
And I want to talk about these stats because they're really interesting. So, Sniper Elite 5. 96% of players played with dialogue subtitles on.
Yep.
35% of players used an increased text size rather than the default option.
That's a lot.
Right? And this is my favourite one of the sniper fact. 97% of players used aim assist across all platforms. Almost everyone turned on some degree of aim assist.
Like, as somebody who has now played and streamed my first ever first-person shooter together with Cyclist Combat, as I talked about last time, I am an aim assist girly now.
Oh, I have always been an aim assist girly.
That made everything so much more fun.
Right,
just
exactly.
Being able to go like, pew, 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 and just it gets fixed. Oh.
Yeah, just not having to think quite as hard about what my hands are doing. I have so much more fun with shooters that way.
It's just like, it's just do you want to put on fun? Yes or no? And yes. 97% of us said yes.
Yeah, like that being such a high, because, you know, we hear really high statistics about subtitles. We've heard them for a couple of years from like Ubisoft and places. Hearing aim assist is that high is fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think is a statistic I'm gonna trot that out with so many people I consult with now.
Many.
So we've also got stats for Zombie Army Dead War 4. 97% of players played with dialogue subtitles on.
Yep.
15% of players used an increased text size rather than the default. So, like, still like 1 in 8 people. 99% of players played with auto reload on.
That is so brilliant.
Brilliant to hear, like, some of the mechanical accessibility things being this high up.
Yeah, because that means that this is, like, it is an accessibility, but it is used by everyone. And that is what accessibility should be in the core.
It's why those Ubisoft stats about subtitles were so important. Is it really demystified this idea that subtitles were a niche thing? It's like, no. Like, regardless of disability, most people are using this feature. You should probably be adding it.
Yep.
The more features you can go, look, if you're not going to care because of disabled people, care because everyone uses it.
Yes.
And the benefit of you caring that everyone uses it is disabled people will get the thing they need.
Yeah. If I am going to get my way by doing it this way, I'm okay with it. It shouldn't need to be it, but I
Yeah.
am not. Beggars cannot be choosers in this point.
Yeah.
I'm just happy.
I will find whatever self-interested way gets me where I need to be.
Yes.
And the last one we had is Evil Genius 2, World Domination. 64% of players used easy or custom difficulty. 33% played on medium. So a lot of people like either didn't make the game harder or explicitly made it easier.
Yep.
Which again, everyone is looking for ways to like tweak difficulty, and the people who want the game to be impossibly hard is a very small percentage of the pie. 81% of players set power generation to easy, is the most commonly lowered option. So 81% of people were like, I just want more resources to work with.
Yep.
I don't want to be so constrained in the gameplay. And only 13% of people set the Forces of Justice to high.
Yep.
So the hardest difficulty option is far less used than the easier difficulty options.
Yep. And it shows really, really like how important difficulty settings are, because I feel like a lot of times I talk about difficulty settings, people are like, you only want easy mode, you want to take away hard games, and it's just like, no, I want both. I want it to be easier for the majority to have fun, and I want it to be harder so that when you are like an extreme geek and nerd and like you have played this game for so many hours and this is like your place and you just want to be the best and do it the hardest way, you go for it. You're also going to have fun.
Exactly. Couple of others, we're almost through the news. Ross Minor announced a project that he has been working on for a while. It's not quite ready yet, but he is working on something called the Accessible Gaming Wiki.
Yeah.
Which is going to be a community-driven wiki that will host accessibility information for specific games, engines, research, and more. Basically to find as much of the accessibility information as possible that is out there in various different places and bring it all into one place so that, like, there is one centralized location where you can find, like, a lot of information about accessibility without having to search around for it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing to be working on.
Yeah. I am all just like really curious on how will it, I hope it will like sort of tie up to the already sources we have for more what do you call it, like reviews. Is there a way we can combine these two? That would be really, really cool.
I hope so. I hope that, like, you know, it's like, here's a hub of factual information, but also here is a hub of, like, here is a bunch of reviews that people did that you can find other personal perspectives on. Make it somewhere that's, like, a starting place to find other resources.
Because, like, if you have this as a start and, like, you go into one of the games or search, like, one specific things, you can have different views, like, experiences. Disability is so vast. The reviews will also be quite vast, and then you can go in and see, okay, but this matches more what I need to understand about it and stuff like that, and that's really, really cool.
Yeah. Also, tying back to GA Conf a couple of weeks ago, you know how we really praised Carrie Waterton's talk for Rebellion about here's how to run accessibility workshops and what worked and what didn't, and a bunch of resources for like running better accessibility workshops with developers. We've got more resources like that. Xbox has released their Game Accessibility Workshops Toolkit, which is a bunch of instructions and visual assets and teaching tools designed for, are you trying to run accessibility workshops within a studio? Here's a bunch of stuff you can just use that is like building blocks to build those kind of workshops out of.
Brilliant.
Xbox is so good at putting their like internal resources out for stuff like this. They've done such a good job of making internal tools just available for everyone.
And it's cool. We need that. We need and I think one thing that I think is good with Xbox, and Carrie also talked about this, is that there isn't any or there might be, but like it shouldn't be a way for you to not use actual disabled voices. So you should still
Yep.
work with disabled voices, but this can lower the barrier of entry, which I feel is quite high still, where you can do things yourself and you don't need to put on like the biggest consultation in from outside. You can just takes part of it in, and it can lower the cost,
Yeah.
especially for smaller companies that don't have the amount of money it will take to get in people who do consultant, because that can be quite expensive.
Yeah. It's always good to see more resources for more people to be dipping their toes into this space.
Yes.
And then the last one, and this is again me doing a bit of self-promotion because I've got a thing about accessibility next week and I want people to tune in and check it out.
Yep.
Friday, June 7th, the Accessibility Summer Showcase is happening. That's going to be about a week after this episode posts. But I can give more specifics about it now because we're closer to it and I some things I can say about it. I know how long it's going to be now. It's going to be a 45-minute showcase of trailers, input from disabled gamers talking about what accessibility means to them, showcasing accessible games and talking about their accessibility stuff. It's going to be 45 minutes long. We've got 20 games in the showcase this year. 10 of those, 50% of the games shown, are aiming to be playable without sighted assistance.
I like
which
that.
I'm so happy we got to that 50% number this year. It's something I've been really passionate about trying to get more involved. Particularly on that number, I'm really excited about the number of genres we have this year that are aiming to be playable without sighted assistance. It's not all... Look, it's great that visual novels and text-based adventures can be accessible through things like text-to-speech. I'm really happy that that's not the only genre we have. We've got a 3D first-person non-violent Metroidvania.
Cool.
We've got an RPG. We've got some city builders.
Ooh.
Really excited about some of those. And I can talk about this one because Whitethorn Games have tweeted about it now. Whitethorn Games are bringing some stuff to the showcase.
Yes.
Which, I know you're excited about that. Person who maybe recorded a little thing talking about why they were excited that Whitethorn Games were coming back, that people will get to see. I can say they're bringing 2 games to the showcase, and I'm really excited about this one. A little, hey, are you an indie dev that has no idea where to get started on accessibility? Here's like a 3-minute crash course on like getting started in accessibility and really easy ways you can get started on that.
I can't wait.
And I'm really excited for that to be a part of it. So Friday, June 7th, 4 p.m. UK, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. I can say our audio descriptions this year are being read by Sightless Combat.
Ooh!
So if you tune into the audio described version of the showcase, you'll get to hear Sightless Combat providing audio descriptions, as well as appearing on screen to introduce one of our games.
Awesome.
We'll have American Sign Language and British Sign Language interpreter versions of the showcase available as well. And by the time we next record a full episode of Ctrl Alt Access, it will have happened. So, woo! I am excited and nervous because this is my baby.
Yeah, this is your baby, and it's going to be good. I can't wait.
I'm excited. So I think that's all of the news for this week.
That's the news for the week. So let's go over to the question from last week and the giveaway we had last time. Last episode we ran a giveaway for two 8-bit do microcontrollers sponsored by Overjoyed, allowing 2 winners to connect the Overjoyed accessibility app to Nintendo Switch via that controller.
Yeah, I have my 8-bit do microcontroller on screen right now for the people watching. I have it here. I've been using it to play Hades with the Overjoyed app on Switch.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I've not had a huge amount of time, but I had some really promising early results, and it's a thing I want to talk about next time we do an episode. Yes. But I have, thank you, Overjoyed. I have my 8-bit do micro, and I've been playing around with the Overjoyed app and having really, really interesting time with it.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, do you want to announce the winners?
Sure. So we did a random drawing of winners of people who answered our question last week, which was, what is your favorite accessible video game? And our winners were Jade Barefoot, at Jade Barefoot on Blue Sky, who said, My favorite accessible game is Final Fantasy XIV because it allows me to explore a huge world without struggling with the controls.
Yeah.
And Albie, who said, I've been super happy with how the Playdate catalog, which for anyone who doesn't know is a little yellow controller console with a little crank on the side that has like tiny little indie games built into it, not only has an accessibility section on games in their store, but as far as I can tell, every single game has filled it out whether they have accessibility features or not. And they've had it since day one of the catalog being available. That feels good to me. So thank you both of them for both of those people for sharing their answers. We have sent them instructions on how to redeem their free 8-bit Doom microcontroller, which they can use to connect the Overjoyed app to Switch.
Yeah.
I hope that goes well for them. I'm super excited.
And thank you so much again for Byowave for giving us the possibility to give away this. This is so cool. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate it.
Couldn't agree more. Do you want to read our new question for this week that people can answer by responding on YouTube or sending us a tweet or emailing us at controlaltaccesspodcast@gmail.com?
I'm so glad you said that because every time I forget that email.
It's all right. I was remembering it as I said it. I was like, I'm sure if I start saying it, I'll find it.
We get there in the end. But yes, what accessibility feature do you wish existed in games that you either not seen attempted or is very rarely offered?
Indeed, and we will let you know our answers to that question next week.
Yes.
I think that's everything from us. Did you have anything you wanted to promote or anything else you wanted to say before we finish up for this week?
If you want to see more about Byowave and the controller, Proteus controller they're making, keep an eye out on my social medias, coming out to small TikToks, and then in maybe not before next episode, but like in a month time, you will have a full YouTube about my experience. So yeah.
Hey, I think that's everything from me, so all that's left to be said is thank you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye!
Bye!